Welcome to the deep dive. It's a really strange thing to realize that the most sophisticated piece of machinery in the known universe, your own brain,
Right.
it's sometimes completely confidently and aggressively wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Consistently wrong.
I mean, you trust it to keep your heart beating, you trust it to navigate complex traffic on the highway, but the moment you get hit with a massive wave of emotion,
Yeah.
that brilliant supercomputer just starts handing out terrible advice.
It is a total paradox of human biology.
Hmm.
I mean, we possess this incredibly advanced cognitive hardware, yet, when we're thrust into a heightened emotional state, our immediate instincts are almost always geared toward an action that will just, well, it'll exacerbate the feeling rather than resolve it.
Right, because the survival mechanisms that worked for like early hominids, they don't exactly translate cleanly into modern psychological distress.
Exactly.
So today, for you listening, we are looking at something highly concentrated and intensely practical. The source we are digging into today is a protocol from a Harvard-trained psychiatrist.
And this isn't abstract theory either.
No, not at all. This is the specific foundational advice this doctor teaches every single patient that walks through their door for handling overwhelming emotions. It functions as a literal map of the mind's emotional traps.
And paired with the counterintuitive actions required to escape them.
Right. The overarching mission of our deep dive today is to really interrogate those specific traps. Because our minds, under emotional duress, they lie to us.
They do. They offer solutions that feel undeniably right in the moment.
Undeniably right, exactly. So we need to look closely at the mechanics of why the brain suggests the wrong path and examine how the specific actions recommended by this psychiatrist actually work to break those psychological cycles.
I think the best place to start is probably with the most explosive, immediate emotion the psychiatrist addresses.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about the one that demands the most urgent physical intervention,
Yes.
right?
Anger.
Anger. According to the source, when you feel angry, your mind is going to tell you to lash out. That is the trap. The actual solution, the counterintuitive action the psychiatrist prescribes, is to instead move your body.
Which is a very deliberate distinction.
It is. I try to visualize the danger of that lash out impulse through like the mechanics of a pressure system.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so lashing out is like dealing with building steam pressure by hitting the release valve with a sledgehammer.
Right.
I mean, the pressure definitely needs to come out, but smashing the valve doesn't vent the steam safely. It causes a structural explosion that damages everything nearby and usually, breaks the machinery itself.
And leaves a huge mess.
Exactly. Moving your body, though, as the psychiatrist suggests, is like intentionally and carefully opening that valve to let the steam vent. The pressure drops, but nothing gets destroyed in the process.
That's a perfect way to look at it. Because to understand why that prescription is so necessary, we really have to look at the physiological demands of anger.
What's happening in the body?
Well, anger is fundamentally a state of high energy. It's an aggressive chemical surge that is designed for immediate action.
The fight or flight response.
Exactly. The brain registers that surge and concludes, okay, this energy must be discharged immediately, and it has to be aimed at whatever caused the spike.
Which translates into the impulse to lash out.
Right. Verbally or physically. But if we look at the exact phrasing in the text swapping, the instinct to lash out for the directive to move your body, it reveals the underlying mechanism of the remedy.
Right.
The brain defaults to a destructive external action. It wants to break a physical object, yell at a colleague, fire off a blistering email. But the prescribed remedy retains the physical release while stripping away the destructive target.
Wait, I have to push back on the distinction the psychiatrist is drawing there.
Okay, what do you mean?
Technically speaking, isn't lashing out a form of moving your body?
Well,
I mean, if I throw a ceramic plate against the wall or scream into a pillow, my body is in motion. The energy is being discharged. Why does the text make such a hard line between lashing out and moving your body if both result in a physical release of tension?
That's a great question. It comes down to the narrative your brain is attaching to the physical action.
The narrative.
Yeah, because lashing out projects the energy outward onto a specific target. It is fundamentally an attack.
Okay.
And when you attack, even if you are just breaking a plate in an empty room, you are reinforcing the narrative in your nervous system that you are in a combative, destructive scenario.
Oh, wow.
You are validating the brain's assessment that there's a threat requiring aggression, and that keeps the cycle of anger churning.
So even if the plate breaks and I feel a momentary release, The brain is still logging the event as a war zone.
It logs it as hostility.
Intentional.
Movement, however, processes the energy internally without the hostility.
Right, because you aren't attacking the pavement when you go for a sprint.
Exactly. You are merely utilizing your muscular system. You process the chemical surge of the emotion through your body without attaching a narrative of destruction to it.
That makes so much sense. You burn off the fuel required by the anger, but you don't validate the brain's demand for violence.
Yes. You are detaching the physical energy from the aggressive narrative. The motion remains, but the weapon is dropped.
Which is such a healthier way to process it.
And it points directly to a broader dynamic of how we manage energy during emotional distress. Because with anger, the trap is projecting high energy outward. But the dynamic flips completely when the emotion turns inward.
Right, which brings us to the second emotional state the psychiatrist notes, sadness.
Yes, sadness.
The trap here is much more subtle, I think. The source notes that when you feel sad, the mind will tell you to either hide it or try to cheer yourself up.
Right.
But the correct action, the actual prescription, is to instead honor it and cry it out.
What's fascinating here is how the psychiatrist groups hiding it and cheering yourself up to the exact same negative category.
Yeah, that stood out to me.
They're both presented as traps.
And the idea of hiding sadness makes intuitive sense, right? Like, bottling things up usually leads to a secondary breakdown later on.
Right, we all know that.
But the impulse to cheer yourself up being labeled as a trap, that is genuinely jarring. I mean, trying to find a silver lining or forcing a smile feels like the socially responsible thing to do.
It feels socially responsible, yes. But functionally, both behaviors serve the exact same psychological purpose, which is avoidance. Forcing cheerfulness is just a more palatable, socially acceptable way of hiding from the actual emotion.
It's basically like putting a smiley face sticker over the check engine light on a car dashboard.
Yes, exactly that.
You haven't addressed the engine malfunction at all. You've just altered your field of vision so you don't have to look at the warning signal.
When your mind tells you to cheer up immediately following a painful event, it is not actually engaging in a healing process.
It's just a defense mechanism.
A defense mechanism to escape the acute discomfort of the sadness. It is avoidance masquerading as self-care.
I understand the avoidance aspect, but let me play devil's advocate here regarding the end goal.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't the ultimate purpose of therapy or seeking psychiatric help in general to achieve a state of happiness? If the end goal is to be cheerful, why is taking the shortcut to get there framed as a trap?
The danger lies in the timeline.
The timeline.
Yeah, rushing the process guarantees you won't actually resolve the feeling. If you immediately try to jump to cheerfulness, you skip the mandatory step of processing the loss.
Because sadness isn't just a mistake in the brain.
No, sadness is not just an error code. It is an active processing state. The psychiatrist explicitly states you must honor it and cry it out. The emotion demands physiological processing.
So in the exact same way, anger required the physical release of movement, sadness requires the physical release of crying.
Yes. Crying is the biological mechanism for releasing that specific emotional weight. If you attempt to bypass the sadness with forced positivity, the sadness does not just evaporate.
It just sits there.
It goes dormant. It remains completely unprocessed in your nervous system, just waiting for a trigger to resurface.
You know, the text's use of the phrase honor, it carries a lot of weight for me.
It's a very specific choice of words.
Right. Because to honor something implies that it has a right to exist. You aren't just enduring a miserable afternoon, you're acknowledging that the sadness has a legitimate function.
You're giving it the space it requires to operate.
Yeah.
And by giving it space, you allow the emotion to complete its natural biological life cycle. Artificially cutting it short with forced positivity just leaves the cycle permanently unfinished.
Which sounds exhausting. Now, both anger and sadness, they are tethered to things that are pretty tangible.
Right, present or past events.
Yeah, anger is usually a reaction to a present threat or an immediate insult. Sadness is a reaction to a loss that has already occurred. But the complication really arises when the mind starts manufacturing threats that haven't actually happened yet.
The time-traveling mind.
Exactly.
Which transitions us perfectly into the third emotional state the source covers, which is anxiety.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, definitely.
The source states that the anxious mind desperately wants to rehearse what-if scenarios. It constantly catastrophizes.
Right, imagining every possible thing that could go wrong in the future.
But the psychiatrist's solution is that instead of rehearsing what if, you should actively rehearse even if scenarios, specifically framing it as, even if X happened, I will be okay
And
because.
that deliberate shift from what if to even if it fundamentally alters how the brain assesses future threats.
I think about it like being forced by your own brain to sit in a theater and watch a horror movie.
Oh, that's a visceral image.
It keeps playing all these what if scenes, you know? What if I fail this project? What if everyone laughs at me? What if I lose all my life savings?
It's a terrifying movie.
It is. And the psychiatrist is basically telling you to forcefully change the genre of the movie in your head to a survival documentary.
I like that.
You still acknowledge the perilous environment, like you admit the mountain is freezing and dangerous, but the focus shifts to the gear you brought to survive the trek. Even if the blizzard hits, I will be okay because I have thermal layers and a flare.
That is exactly what's happening. The anxious mind utilizes what if to keep you suspended in a state of perpetual, unresolvable threat.
Unresolvable being the key word.
Right. What if poses a question that has no concrete answer and that keeps the amygdala, the brain's fear center, constantly firing?
But wait, let me ask you this. Isn't an even if scenario just a different flavor of worrying?
How do you mean?
Well, if I say to myself, even if I get fired tomorrow, I'll be okay, I'm still actively focusing my mental energy on the prospect of getting fired. I am still dwelling on the negative outcome.
That's true.
So how does keeping the bad event in focus actually break the anxiety trap?
It breaks the trap because the core mechanism of anxiety isn't the thought of the bad event itself.
It isn't.
No, the core mechanism is the feeling of total helplessness in the face of that event.
Oh.
If we look closely at the specific syntax of the psychiatrist's quote, the functional element of the remedy isn't actually phrase, even if. The functional element is the word because.
The word because is doing the heavy lifting there.
Absolutely. The structure provided is, even if X happened, I will be okay because.
Right.
That word because acts as a mandatory cognitive prompt. It forces your mind to stop free-falling through hypothetical doom, and instead, it requires it to search your memory and logic for concrete evidence of your own competence.
It demands a logical conclusion to an illogical spiral.
Precisely.
So you aren't feeding your brain toxic positivity. You aren't saying, stop worrying, the presentation will go perfectly.
The brain would reject that as a lie anyway.
Right, it knows better. Instead, you are saying, let's assume the worst case scenario actually happens. Now what? You are forcing the brain to answer the now what.
Yes. You're saying, even if I lose this job, I will be okay because I have a decade of marketable skills in my industry, because I have 6 months of emergency savings, because my family will support me while I look for a new role.
Wow.
You transition your self-perception from a passive victim of a cruel future to an active participant equipped for survival.
That is so empowering. You neutralize the paralyzing effect of the anxiety not by ignoring the potential threat, but by systematically validating your ability to withstand it.
Exactly. It is a highly grounded way to manage fear.
But, there is a threshold where anxiety spirals so far, or where anger and sadness compound on top of the anxiety, that the brain simply cannot process that cognitive prompt.
The system just gets overloaded.
Right, it hits a wall, which leads directly to the final emotional state the psychiatrist addresses, the state of being completely stuck.
Being stuck.
Feeling stuck. The source notes that when you are in this paralyzed state, your mind's trap is to passively consume more information.
Which is so common.
It tricks you into believing that the key to getting unstuck is out there somewhere just waiting to be found. But the psychiatrist's solution to break out of this paralysis is to create, which is an active state.
Right.
And the examples given in the text are notably mundane, like creating stick drawings or cleaning the dishes.
This raises an important question about modern habits, honestly.
Oh, so?
When people feel overwhelmed or utterly paralyzed by their circumstances today, the immediate, almost universal reflex is to pull out a phone and scroll.
Oh, doom scroll.
Doom scrolling or binging media or endlessly reading articles about productivity or other people's success stories.
Yeah, we convince ourselves we are in a research phase.
Right.
We rationalize it by thinking, I just need to find the right piece of advice or the right organizational hack or the right motivational quote, and then the fog will lift and I'll know exactly what to do.
But the psychiatrist identifies that research phase as the trap itself.
Because it's passive.
The mind desires passive consumption because it requires zero energetic output. But flooding an already overwhelmed, paralyzed system with more data, more opinions, and more noise That only deepens the paralysis.
You are not acquiring a lifeline.
No, you are burying your own agency under the weight of endless external input.
Okay, the danger of passive consumption makes complete logical sense, but I struggle with the specific examples the psychiatrist provides to counter it.
Stick figures and dishes.
Yeah, I mean, come on, how on earth does washing the dishes count as creating something?
I know it sounds odd.
Drawing stick figures, I can categorize that as art, even if it's rudimentary. But doing household chores, how does standing at a sink washing a pan pull a brain out of deep emotional paralysis? It just feels like mindless drudgery, not creation.
Definitely seems like a contradiction until you look at the dichotomy the text is actually establishing.
Okay.
The contrast isn't between consuming media and making high art. The contrast is strictly between a passive state of being and an active state of being. The text notes, instead, you should create, which is active.
Oh, so the focus is entirely on the mechanism of action, disregarding the aesthetic value of the output.
Exactly. When you are stuck, your internal state is chaotic, and your posture toward the world is entirely passive. You are merely receiving stimuli.
I'm just a sponge.
Right. To break that, you must transition to an active state that imposes order. When you clean the dishes, you are taking a chaotic, messy physical environment, and through your own deliberate physical agency, you are creating a clean state.
You are taking disorganized matter and creating order.
Yes.
You are creating a cleared-off counter. You are generating tangible proof in the physical world that you still have the capacity to affect your surroundings.
And that breaks the feedback loop of mental paralysis through simple, undeniable physical proof. Drawing stick figures operates on the exact same mechanism. You are confronted with a blank page, a void, and through your active physical effort, you bring something into existence that was not there 30 seconds prior.
It really doesn't matter if the output is a stick figure or a clean coffee mug, does it?
It doesn't matter at all.
Right.
The critical shift is moving your brain's self-assessment from I am a passive vessel receiving the world to I am an active agent capable of shaping the world.
It functions exactly like jump-starting a dead car battery.
Ooh, that's a good analogy.
You don't need the battery to drive you across the country in that exact moment. You only need enough of a spark to get the engine to turn over.
Yeah.
Washing a dish or doodling on a napkin provides the lowest possible barrier to entry for generating that initial spark of agency.
And if we look at the through line connecting all four of these emotional states, anger, sadness, anxiety, and being stuck, the common denominator is that the mind's initial impulse always strips you of your productive agency.
It does. It really does. Let's synthesize the broader implications of this protocol then. We started with the mission to map out the mind's emotional traps and the corresponding escape routes based on the psychiatrist's foundational advice.
Right.
The overarching takeaway here is that navigating severe emotional turbulence requires the conscious recognition that your initial, most demanding mental impulse is highly likely to be a trap.
It is literally an invitation to compound your own distress.
Yeah. Overcoming emotional overwhelm requires the discipline to override the mind's default setting and execute the counterintuitive action.
It's work.
It is work.
Real.
When anger demands that you lash out and destroy, you must swap it for physical movement to safely vent the internal pressure.
And when sadness tempts you to hide or paste on a fake smile, you must swap it for honoring the feeling and crying to allow the biological processing to actually finish.
Exactly. When anxiety traps you in a paralyzed what-if scenario, you must swap it for an even-if, because framework to locate your logical anchor.
And when feeling stuck lures you into passively consuming endless information, you must swap it for active creation, even if it's just washing a dish, to prove you still possess agency.
It represents a fundamental rewiring of how we respond to our internal alarm systems.
It demands a high degree of self-awareness to feel the gravitational pull of those traps and deliberately choose to step in the opposite direction.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The next time you feel the heat of one of these overwhelming emotions, your primary objective is not to immediately fix the external circumstances causing it.
No.
Your primary objective is to refuse the bait your own brain is dangling in front of you.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought to mull over based on the text we explored today.
What's that?
Well, society frequently encourages us to trust our gut or follow our intuition.
Sure, you hear that all the time.
But if our minds so reliably generate the exact wrong instruction when we are in a heightened emotional state, we may need to completely redefine what we consider to be our intuition during a crisis.
No, that's heavy.
If you are overwhelmed, angry, sad, anxious, or stuck, Should you actually treat your immediate emotional instinct as a broken compass? One that points perfectly and consistently in the wrong direction?
Wow.
And if that is the case, how much courage does it require to look at where the compass is pointing and intentionally walk the other way?
That is a heavy, necessary question to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your instincts. Keep looking for the even if, and most importantly, keep questioning your sources. We'll catch you next time.